work went into this.
And by the way, I was remiss in not acknowledging some of the other people that are on here from the committee. So Howard, no, I want to, Howard, it's very important. Howard chaired this committee, gave an awful lot of his time, as did all of it. Mike McGuire, I see you down there. I don't know if there's any, I don't think there's any other committee members that are on, but Walter, Jen, all of you spent, Ed, sorry, Ed, didn't mean to leave you out. And in addition, there Heather Brown from the county, and Phil Vallone, and Kirsten Foster, and Josh Potosik. And did I leave anyone else out? I think I got them all right. Hopefully. Anyway, so very much grateful to everyone for their time that they spent. So with that, Jen, I'll give it back to you.
Sure, thanks. So in short, the recommendations are as follows. The general abatement program, the committee recommends that's a 20-year program, and the committee recommends that for the second 10 years of a pilot under the general abatement program, that the pilot payment be tied to the actual assessed value of the project parcel or parcels. That's in response partly to comments from the taxing jurisdictions that the program is too generous. So in this way, we start out a project with a negotiated value subject to pilot, and we try to estimate what the assessed value at full build out is going to be. But by tracking the pilot payments against the actual assessed value for the second 10 years of the program, we can be a little bit more sure that the pilot payments mirror a set exemption value off what the actual taxes would be. And then at the end of the 20-year period, the project returns to the tax rolls, and it's hopefully a gradual transition, or excuse me, an easy transition. There's not a huge jump from that last year pilot to the first year taxes.
And Jen, I think it merits saying that it's fundamentally more fair where you have it going the other way, because we do have projects and have had projects where the TVSP has exceeded the amount on the assessment roll, and we end up recomputing a lower pilot payment because we have a higher value than the assessor has. So I think it's fundamentally fair both directions.
Right. That's important. Yes. The other proposed change to the general abatement program is the committee recommends that for benefits under the general abatement program to distribution center projects, that those be granted for distribution center projects that also propose to create some housing for their employees. And that's really in response to, as you know, a local and statewide and national labor crisis that's exacerbated here in Sullivan County by a housing crisis and a lack of available housing. The tourism industry program, the committee is recommending keeping the tourism industry program as it is, but also integrating the existing destination resort program into the tourism industry program. So destination resort is a more aggressive set of abatements, and that has historically been the program through which the IDA incentivizes large destination resort projects. What the committee is proposing is that the tourism industry program remain the same, but that more aggressive abatement schedule from the destination resort program be built into the tourism industry program, again, for projects that are proposing to build housing. So some of the criteria that the IDA has had for large projects, like a project to be eligible for the destination resort program, as it currently is written, a project needs to invest a minimum of $25 million and create and spend at least $250,000 per room. Those criteria the committee proposes to do away with, but to leave in force a criterion that the project must create some level of employment and also create a certain number of housing units. And you'll see in the draft report there are some question marks there. The committee has I think has not completely reached a consensus on the number of rooms that are proposed. The number of housing units that are proposed for each room created. So you'll see that in the report. Targeted manufacturing, again, the committee recommends that that program remain intact, but that the IDA makes certain that green technology manufacturing is incentivized through the targeted manufacturing program. So you'll see a little further down in the recommendations, the committee is recommending that the green tech manufacturing program, which is limited to projects at the SUNY Sullivan campus, that project that program be integrated into targeted manufacturing. So that would make it, that would ensure that the IDA could incentivize green technology manufacturing anywhere in the county, not just at the SUNY Sullivan campus. Retail sales program, the only change the committee recommends there is just that the IDA make sure that the restrictions and requirements in the retail sales program mirror the current restrictions and requirements in the general municipal law. IDAs have a number of special restrictions upon us when we're incentivizing retail sales programs. So just want to retail sales projects. So we just want to make sure that the policy matches the law. Next one is green tech. We already talked about integrating that into the manufacturing program. Destination resort, we talked about integrating that into the tourism industry program. Next is the IDA has a little used policy. It was a program, it was used once, and that's the tax credit participation program. And it's got a very narrow focus, and there are very few projects that are eligible under that program. So the committee recommends doing away with that program and just keeping an eye on federal and state tax credit programs that come down the pike in the future. And maybe the IDA would want to create a new policy that that would enable them to enable the IDA to incentivize projects in conjunction with any new tax credit programs. Next is a distributed generation program. The committee recommends that the IDA eliminate the requirement that a taxing jurisdiction has to participate in Section 487 of the real property tax law. We can talk in more detail about that, but the current policy does require that a taxing jurisdiction must participate in 487 of the real property tax law, which is a solar exemption program through New York State. And the committee has looked at how the projects have been approved and where they've been approved, and feels that there's not really a reason to keep that requirement in the policy. And then last is the suggested creation of the Sullivan County International Airport Program. And that would be a new program that would provide a 30-year abatement schedule for projects proposing to build hangars or other aviation-related facilities on the roughly 600 acres that the county owns at the Sullivan County International Airport. And last, I just wanted to mention that the committee obviously identified some issues and policy areas that are outside of the scope of this specific review, but that require or merit a lot more discussion: housing, Main Street redevelopment, childcare. And so those are things that the committee urges that the IDA spend some more time looking at, and the committee members have graciously agreed to continue working on those issues even after this review of the policy has concluded.
I have
Go ahead, Howard.
just a couple quick things. One,
Sure.
I think that one of the biggest things that we've learned, or that was questioned throughout the process of meeting with tons of different people, was the most widely misconception about our programs is that it's all on the enhancement. In other words, it's not. We're giving tax benefits in a sense to growth, not to existing to projects that are on the tax rolls today that have an existing tax structure. So I think it's important to just note that the general public really didn't understand that we're doing things, tax abatements are on the future, not on the existing. And that was a big thing that came up that was a little surprising to me that no one seemed to know or understand or remember.
You have a recommendation, Howard, as to how we can better educate? It sounds like we have some gaps that we need to.
I think
Sorry.
it's brought out a lot, and we just need to remember that each time we have somebody that, you know, requests some understanding of why we're doing what we're doing, is to, you know, instead of us, because we kind of assume that, we need to remind them of that on a regular basis when we have people that question our thought process. We might just want to incorporate that into a regular comment. But I also had a thought, and Walter and I chatted a little bit about this, and I guess it's up to you in a sense. Can we lift the moratorium at this point? Is there a thought process to that?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense for us. You know, initially the temporary pause was enacted to allow the committee to render a report. And since the committee has now rendered a report, if the board wishes to consider terminating the temporary pause, a resolution was prepared and circulated. I don't know whether you want to consider that today or not. It certainly makes sense. And in the resolution, we made provision for anyone that asks for an application to IDA before the IDA acts on the committee recommendation to be provided with a copy of this report. And if they propose to do something that would be in contravention of the recommendations in the report, they would obviously be doing that at their own risk, because filing an application doesn't vest any rights in an applicant like a building permit does. The policy in effect when the IDA gets to the end of the process is the policy that applies to a project. So Jen, I think maybe Julio circulated that proposed resolution. Is that right?
Yes, I circulated it and it's on the website as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we should do that, Walter. I don't see any reason at this point.
I think we wanted to keep the temporary pause for as short a period of time as possible.
Exactly.
And all of the substantial recommendations of the committee are now known and in this report. There'll be a couple of very minor tweaks, but the general direction that the committee is headed is now known. So I agree with Howard when he asked me about that. And I think it's his recommendation as chairman of the review committee. Howard, you also believe the temporary pause should be terminated, right?
I do. I know that I don't think we received any applications in the interim, but
Nope.
I think that our word was we needed to go through this process, and we didn't have the existing resources available to us to do both and do both things correctly. So now that Jen did an amazing job in getting us to this point, I'd like to make a motion to lift our temporary pause.
I'll second it.
Is there any further discussion on lifting that? And I guess the only thing I want to just say then, so if I understood what you were saying, Walter, to be clear, if an applicant submits an application under an old or existing UTEP program, one that they would be on notice might be changing based on this report, that they do so, taking that into account.
You'll always run the risk when you're applying to an IDA that there could be a change in policy while your application is pending. We went a little further in the proposed resolution, indicating that if somebody contacts the IDA and asks for an application or asks for our UTEP, that we also provide them with a copy of the committee report.
Right. Which is now a public document anyway, right?
It's on the website, went up on Friday.
Okay. All right, does anyone have any other discussion before we vote on the resolution to lift the pause? Okay, hearing none, let's call the question. All in favor of lifting the pause?
Aye.
Signify by aye. Any opposed? All right, the pause is lifted.
You may have just made a couple friends, but you'll never know.
Those are the same ones, Howard, that don't understand the new value versus old value, the same friends. That understand it perfectly but don't want to. But let's move on.
Okay, well, so I guess we kind of went, no, that we weren't out of order because that was a new resolution. Okay, so let's move on in the agenda. The next item is the engagement. I guess this is really related to what we're talking about. So let's talk about the engagement of Jacobowitz and Gubitz as special counsel to assist with the amendment of the agency's uniform tax exemption policy. So Walter, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I try to take pride in what I don't know, which is most everything. And I am certainly not an expert on the federal or state laws regarding housing. So if we're going to get the IDA involved in programs that deal with housing through the requirement that housing be created in order to qualify for benefits for a distribution center, or to get a better level of real estate tax abatements for a tourism destination, we need to find a way to impose those requirements. My thought process is that that would be imposed by a deed restriction on the housing parcel that's associated with a sponsor project. It's an area that requires special expertise that I certainly don't have. So we checked out a number of different law firms, trying to stay as local as we could. And Jacobowitz and Gubitz does have a partner and an associate who are heavily involved in fair housing type law. So I would recommend the agency authorize engagement of Jacobowitz and Gubitz as special counsel to assist with implementing the recommendations of the review committee.
I'll second that. Well, no, I'll make the motion.
Okay,
I'll
I made,
second
is Howard seconded.
Yeah, one of us.
So any discussion, questions? I think it's a really smart idea. I think this is very complicated. Housing, everything from affordable workforce market. I mean, it's all at play here. And obviously the problem we're trying to solve is the workforce housing in particular. That was the theme, wasn't it, Howard? I think you had mentioned that you heard at every one of your meetings.
Yeah.
Around an ed.
It's impossible for us to even find mid-level, any housing, even for mid-level jobs.
Any other points anyone wants to make, or questions, comments related to this retention of Jacobowitz? No? Okay, so call the question. All in favor of retaining Jacobowitz, say aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. The next item of business is Sunset Lake Development Corp., an application for benefits. Who's going to walk us through that, Walter?
Yeah, I'd like to, I did prepare a resolution this morning because we just got this application today. And it might be easiest to walk through it by taking a look at that draft resolution if Jen can circulate it and make it available. I probably best, we have Mike, Ken, and Joseph on the line. Maybe we can email it to them or even put it up. It's up to you.
Do you want me to, I can share my screen right now, or?
That would be fine.
I'll do that right now. Okay.
The proposed application from Sunset Lake Local Development Corporation relates to the Adult Care Center. There's currently a dispute between the Local Development Corporation and the town of Liberty over the taxable status of the Adult Care Center. A lot of research has gone into that on both sides, and I think it's accurate to say that there's no sure outcome of that dispute. So the IDA was contacted by the LDC to see if the IDA would intervene and take an interest in that property so that there would be a known amount of pilot payment due versus the uncertainty that the taxing jurisdictions and operator would have over the next few years while navigating a dispute over the taxable status. So Jen, if you would scroll down sort of to the end, there's findings that the agency would need to make right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, go back to 1 and 2. So the reasoning for considering a deviation, and it would be a deviation for 2 reasons. The amount of the pilot payment would be a fixed amount, and it would be equal to what we estimate the real estate taxes would be for the upcoming year versus being based upon the assessed value, which seems to have been somewhat, well, I'm not going to say arbitrarily determined, but there's not even consensus on the amount of land which has been conveyed to the LDC. The deed provides for 24 acres. The tax roll provides for 50 acres. There's a lot of uncertainty. So finding number one recognizes that there is a dispute. Finding number two would indicate that if the agency takes an interest in the project, then the real estate becomes exempt from ad valorem real estate taxes, ad valorem being county, town, and school. The only other major tax line item there is a sewer tax, and that's based on units, not assessed value. The proposed pilot would be a fixed amount due in January of 2023, which is substantially equal to what the taxes would be for next fall's school tax and next January's county and town tax. The amount we can't say it's identical, but it would be substantially equal. We're estimating that the taxes would be around $348,000 if it stays on the assessment roll as taxable. The proposed pilot payment is $350,000, which is substantially equal. By the agency becoming involved in the project, then the outcome of the dispute is only relevant for a very tiny portion of the tax bill, being the fire district. The sewer district is based upon sewer units, and the county, town, and school tax would then be exempt, but would make the payment in lieu of tax of $350,000, increasing annually by CPI over the life of the pilot, with a 2% cap on any annual increase. And the benefit to the company is they would know what they need to pay. The benefit to the taxing jurisdictions is it wouldn't be an all or nothing outcome on the dispute. They know that they would get paid whether the property is ultimately determined to be exempt or taxable. And any prospective transferee of the project from the county that is going to be running a business from the company, could then budget for and expect to know what they're going to owe versus having no idea what they're going to owe, which is the position you'd be in if you're looking at a tax bill of zero if the property is exempt, or a tax bill of about the same amount as the pilot payment if the property is determined to be taxable. So that's a summary of the application.
Okay.
All that this does for today is basically under the provisions of the general municipal law and under the agency's uniform tax exemption policy. Section 600 of our uniform tax exemption policy requires the agency to provide written notice to the affected taxing jurisdictions, here being the county, town of Liberty, and Liberty Central School District, prior to the agency acting on a deviation request, and it establishes a time frame for the taxing jurisdictions to provide comments to the agency of February 14th, 2022, which is the agency's next regular meeting.
So there's no action that we take today.
Just this resolution. The only action would be the action to ask Jen to make the taxing jurisdictions aware of the application, which we want to do today. There's no action you're taking on the application. You may decide to view the application favorably or unfavorably, but by acting today, you give early notice to the taxing jurisdictions, which I believe to be the most appropriate. The earlier the taxing jurisdictions are aware, the better.
This is a positive, though, is it not?
Well, it depends. I mean, it provides predictability for the LDC. It provides predictability for the taxing jurisdictions. The status right now is there's a dispute, and it's not an easy analysis of whether or not this property is or is not exempt from real estate taxes. I don't want to get into a legal analysis because I'm not involved in that aspect of it. But I think it would be, I think both the attorney for the town and the attorney for the LDC would agree that there's no sure outcome of the dispute. This makes the dispute less meaningful and eliminates a great deal of uncertainty. So from that standpoint, Howard, I would say yes, it's a positive.
Okay. All right, so does anyone have any, I guess what we need to do is then have a motion to approve this resolution, and then we can have discussion if needed. So can I have a motion to approve this resolution? Jen, do you mind, can you take that down, Jen,
Yep.
just because, so I can get this?
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Sean was the one who raised his
Sean
hand.
moved. Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
That was Ed?
Yep.
Ed second. Okay. Any discussion related to this? Questions, comments? Okay, so hearing none, call the question. All in favor of supporting this resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. If I'm not mistaken, we are at the point of public comment, or did I miss anything, Jen?
No public comment.
Okay, so let's go to public comment. Ken, Mr.
Never
Walter.
never let you down. Is the draft report going to be available to the public, and should have been available to the public up on the website?
It was on
Alrighty.
Friday. It was put up on Friday, Ken.
Did it meet the 24-hour rule? What was meeting law requires 24 hours before any motion can be discussed. Okay? And it's not, and it's been out there for a while, which brings me to the last resolution you just did, does not meet that qualification, because that gives the board members and the public plenty of time to read and digest the resolution, which we did not have. So that's, as far as I'm concerned, this resolution should have been moved to the first regular meeting or down the road. To me, it's really null and void because you failed to follow the open meetings law. And that was passed into law over a month ago. So everybody should have been aware of that. I'm glad to see you're going to try to have some housing with your UTAP, but it's going to be interesting to read all those things. Like I said, I have not seen it. It was posted. There was no notification from what I can see from any from your office to the general public or the press that this information was up, nor a link to it. So there again, we fell short. So, the thing always comes down to transparency and notification, and you've got to get your act together. Enough of this. The public is not the bad people if they're informed. They could be your asset. Sometimes we can question what you do and so forth, and that's our right. We got brains and we see things differently than you do, and vice versa. It's an exchange of ideas. But when you constantly do this, not notifying the public and not following the law, you back yourself into the corner. And as far as I'm concerned, this resolution you just passed is null and void because you did not give proper notice to your board members and to the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
I just
Any
had a
other-
clarifying question for the board. What you guys just approved in terms of the resolution, just to clarify again, it's only that Jen is going to notify the tax jurisdictions, right? You didn't exactly pass.
That's all. That's
the
all.
resolution.
Nothing whatsoever other than notifying the taxi jurisdictions.
Okay.
We didn't adopt the draft that was posted on Friday of our recommendations either, did we?
No.
Still in violation.
Any other public comment other than from my dog? No? Okay.
To adjourn.
Adjourn. Howard, can I have a second?
I'll second it.
Was that Ed? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we are adjourned.